Franco Terrazzano in Ottawa, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So, Franco, I want to start with you. You work with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, as I said, and you have said, you put out a release today basically saying that the carbon rebrand is just lipstick on a pig. I wonder if you could elaborate on that and why you think this rebranding is not going to help.
And I meant it. It is just putting lipstick on a pig. I don't think a new name for the carbon tax and its rebate is going to help the government. And I think that's because the government doesn't really have a communications problem. That's not the real issue. They have a carbon tax is making people's lives more expensive problem, right? And it's hitting the necessities. The carbon tax is making it more expensive for people to fuel up their car or to heat their home. And let's not forget that only a couple months ago, Canadians watched their prime minister standing with his Atlantic caucus and now announcing relief by taking the carbon tax off of furnace oil for 3 years, while leaving the vast majority of Canadians out in the cold paying the carbon tax this winter. And so, look, I think if the federal government really wants to dig its way out of these political polls, they have to ask themselves a serious question. And that question is, with Canadians furious and struggling to afford a carbon tax that's now 14 cents per liter of gas, well, how are Canadians going to react when the carbon tax is eventually cranked up to 37 cents per liter of gas? How much lipstick are they going to need for that?
Okay, so Riley, let me let you weigh in here and get your thoughts on what Franco has to say and whether or not, the government needs to be focusing its efforts right now on a rebrand.
I mean, I feel like that's part of it. I disagree that they don't have a communications problem. I think that they do have a communications problem, and they also have a policy problem here. I think the government fundamentally has to rebuild this part of their climate strategy altogether. Because it's true that I think the stat says somewhere like 40% of Canadians, when they saw the climate action incentive come into their bank account, they were like, I don't know what this is. I understand it's coming from the government, but 40%. So do I think them not understanding that, 40% of people not understanding that, is the reason why many people have fallen out of favor with the carbon tax? No, I don't think that's the sole or major reason. They're going to have to do a lot more work, like saying this is how much of a reduction in emissions that the carbon tax has given us. And this is what that means actionably in terms of our combating the climate crisis. These are other things that we are doing. They're like the full scale communication of this in policy sector needs to be, I think, totally redone.
Okay, Charles, let me get your initial thoughts on this and what your co-panelists had to say.
I don't want to be overly sweet on this Valentine's Day, but I do tend to agree with both of the guests. I think we do have a communications problem here. Liberals have a communications problem, and they also have a policy problem. It doesn't matter how many people get rebates. Most people believe that when they go to the gas pumps and when they go to the supermarkets and when they pay their rent and when they pay their mortgage, they are paying a huge amount of carbon taxes, climate action taxes. It doesn't matter what you call it. And that's because the Conservatives and many of their media allies have been excellent at communicating day after day after day. Axe the tax, axe the tax. We may call it superficial. We may call it a lot of things. It's been smart politics. The Conservatives have out-communicated the Liberals on this. And whether or not the policy is substantive, it doesn't really matter. Because if you can't communicate the policy, then you just don't win. And right now, the Liberals are losing so large on this carbon issue that even the NDP, that is always pro-carbon tax, it's religion for the NDP to be pro-carbon tax. Every single NDP leadership candidate in Alberta is talking about wiping out the carbon tax, finding a new way to deal with climate action.
Okay, Franco, polling suggests that a quarter of Canadians eligible for the rebate believe they didn't receive it. Where do you think this confusion stems from?
Well, I don't know, but one of the big problems policy-wise and I guess communications-wise is that, the Trudeau government isn't even showing that it's willing to do the little things when it comes to taxation to make life more affordable. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we've been pushing the government to completely scrap the carbon tax. Trudeau may never be willing to do that, but he could at least not raise the carbon tax again on April 1. Right? Or he could extend the same relief that he gave predominantly to Atlantic Canadians to all Canadians and take the carbon tax off of everyone's home heating bill this winter. Or finally, he could make sure that the carbon tax is removed from the propane and natural gas used on Canadian farms and make sure that the original Bill C-234 becomes law ASAP. So another issue is that Trudeau has the opportunity to at least do the little things to make life more affordable, but his government's not doing that.
Riley, do you think, as Franco says here, the feds need to pivot on this? And if they do pivot, how do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, if I was advising them, I would be also suggesting a pivot. In terms of the substance of that, I think that what they need to be doing is needing to be saying, we're taking a complete pause on the way we've been doing it this far. Forget the carbon tax as we've presented it to you, and we're going to go and we're going to come up with something new that addresses the needs that we've come here. And in addition to a carbon tax, we are going to be accountable in a greater way of showing you what this carbon tax is actually doing for you, for the environment, because that's the reason why they say, remember the wildfires out west? Do you remember the storms in Atlantic Canada? Making sure that people actually feel there's an incentive there. And furthermore, also recognizing that the carbon tax was far more popular when the economy was doing well. Now that we are in what is largely being looked at as an affordability crisis, that there also is going to have to be policy interventions in other ways so that successful marketing that the Conservatives did to make you feel like the carbon tax is the reason why everything is the main reason why everything is so unaffordable, that they feel like they're doing something about that too.
Okay, well, turning to our other story for the night, Environment Minister, he clarified his remarks that he made earlier today about the federal government stopping investing in new road infrastructure. Take a listen to what he had to say.
What I have said is that the solutions to our transport challenge pass by many different things, including massive investment in public transit, including investment in electrification of transportation. And of course we're funding roads. We have programs to fund roads. What we have said, and maybe I should have been more specific in the past, is that we don't have funds for large projects like the Troisième Lien that the CAQ has been trying to do for many years.
Okay. Charles, we'll start with you on this one. We were talking about communications and communication blunders. What did you make of this moment on the Hill today?
Well, Stéphane Guilbeault is a very, very smart guy, and he's terrific at being a climate change activist, but he is absolutely horrible as a retail politician. He is Santa Claus for Pierre Poilievre every day. Even if Pierre Poilievre didn't have a brain in his body, and even if he didn't have any personality, it's just too easy quoting Stéphane Guilbeault once or twice every couple of weeks and making it out that Stéphane Guilbeault is the hidden agenda for the Liberals. Because every time Guilbeault opens up his mouth and starts lecturing Canadians, and now in that cumbersome speech that he did that he's being quoted on, where he's essentially saying that every Canadian ought to be living in downtown Toronto or downtown Montreal. That's how it comes across. We should do more walking and less driving. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't even put money into major highway projects. It doesn't matter how much he wants to walk it back. There aren't enough Zambonis in Canada to clean up after Stéphane Guilbeault.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to you in a second, Franco, but I want to first get Riley's reaction here because I see you shaking your head when it comes to Stephen Guilbeault's comments here. Do you think that him saying that he should have been more specific, cleans up this controversy?
No, it definitely doesn't. I agree with Charles that the walk back is going to be insufficient for this one. I don't know why, if what he's trying to say is, what I'm assuming he's trying to say, right, is that there's going to be no more construction of new major highways. And if that's what he's trying to say, essentially, why not having said that in the first place? Because it gave Pierre Poilievre the perfect soundbite to say things which are, untrue, but relatedly enough on the headline to be like, he said that we're going to get rid of roads, was a tweet that he put out, which is, obviously not what he's doing, but he communicated it so poorly that it created the perfect avenue for those types of comments from the opposition to come out. So there's that. But also, once again, I think, like, tying back to, maybe our previous point, that I think it's a complete failure on the climate and environment policy, sector altogether of the government to not communicate, again, how this ties in, how they recognize the real day-to-day impacts and how they're balancing that that with their climate objectives. There's just so much obscurity that they really need to start picking up, especially as we head towards election era season, I guess.
Yeah, election season. Okay, Franco, I'm going to give you the last word to you on this topic.
Well, first of all, if the government's going to be cutting spending for roads, they better be cutting gas taxes. But, to a more kind of political point, it makes the government seem like it just doesn't really understand the day-to-day challenges and lives for ordinary Canadians. I think if you ask most Canadians what they actually want the government to be spending money on, I think many Canadians would say, yeah, fix the potholes so I don't have to take the car to the mechanic every time I go visit the in-laws. And, I'm all for finding savings, but I think, hey, maybe we stop spending $8 million building a barn at Rideau Hall before you go after the roads, or, maybe don't turn an $80,000 app into a $60 million boondoggle, or, hat tip to the CBC. Let's figure out a way to be able to host a conference in Canada without spending $600,000 on luxury hotel rooms that we didn't even use.
All right, we're going to hit pause on that part of the conversation right now. We are talking about now an exclusive interview with the BBC. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said that AI can be used to supercharge election disinformation and incite violence. So, Charles, I want to start with you on this one. Are you concerned about this? And do you think that AI should have any place kind of in elections, or that governments really should be super focused on making sure that there are sufficient guardrails around this?
Well, I wish government had the capacity, the political will and the technological capacity, because this is going to get really, really dangerous. It's dangerous enough right now that social media is absolutely polluted, absolutely contaminated with disinformation and misinformation. People believe all kinds of nonsense in this country and countries all over the world because of robots, algorithms. I don't want to get into all the technical names, but the point is, so much of what's on social media right now isn't even close to true, and some of it is bordering on evil. With artificial intelligence, all of this becomes exponentially more dangerous as we put words literally into people's mouths, and we'll have various leaders around the world looking like they're saying the kinds of things that will most definitely incent people to hate, to loathe each other, to loathe countries, to want to make war on countries. It'll be very easy to do. I don't know how easy it'll be for any government to make a change there, but everyone right now who is cynical about the information they get, they'll get exponentially more cynical as artificial intelligence seeps into the drinking water with each day.
Franco, obviously the United States watching this closely. How much of a concern do you think Canadian government officials should have when it comes to AI in our elections here in this country?
Well, just full disclosure, I really don't know the first thing about the workings of AI. That's way above my pay grade. And also, too, I've never been a part of partisan campaigns, right? So it's tough for me to get into the weeds on this. But one concern I do have is yes, there may be some legitimate concerns for a government around this type of stuff. But I also worry that a government may use a sledgehammer that may reduce legitimate freedom of expression around election time. And I'll just plant a seed, regardless of who you support, whether that's the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc, the Green, or whatever party you do support, just remember that one of the beauties of a democracy is that parties in power come and go. And just remember that even if you may support a party in power with legislating power over that today, you may not want a different party to have that type of power tomorrow.
Okay, so Riley, picking up on that, do you think that there are shades of gray here? Because, when we hear about AI often when it comes to elections, it is very much doom and gloom. But are there shades of gray here, as Franco says? And should we be careful about too many restrictions when it comes to the use of AI?
I mean, I think first, I would be surprised if the government, at least in Canada, had the capacity, the political capacity to develop a sledgehammer to take on AI in such a constraining way. We historically have not been able to pass many policies, much legislation that constrains, private enterprise on the internet, related to the internet in any way. We all don't have news on our Facebook feeds right now, to attest to this. And so I feel like I'm I'm not so worried necessarily of encroachments on freedom of speech so much as I am of the sort of like negative consequences. Because what we're talking about here, of the reason that we're requiring this type of intervention, is not for its practical uses. Like we in the article about this, I should say, folks were saying that they use it to mine through some data to figure out what all the polls are saying, and they get it to you really fast. That's a useful thing. We're talking about deep fakes. We're talking about impersonation. We're talking about putting words, as Charles was saying, into people's mouths and on their faces, literally. And so I think that the need for intervention is there, but I'm just not confident that we can actually do it.
So if it's not on government, then Charles, does it need to be the responsibility need to be on social media companies to self-regulate here, and will they do that without government intervention?
Well, all social media companies have to do, not to disparage Franco, all social media companies have to do is say, oh, no. We believe in freedom of expression. We believe that the people should make up their own minds. That is absolute nonsense, but it works for them because all that matters to them is click, 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 click. And with AI, the clicks will be going up. They'll be going up exponentially. And we can talk about how we don't really want any particular party to have any power over other party. But the point is, we'll wait and see. But the deep fakes that have been just discussed by this illustrious panel are absolutely serious, because if we have prime ministers, opposition leaders, and other people saying things that they didn't say, the other party will say, no, that is them. That is them saying it. They're Stephen Guilbeault every day. They're the highway to hell every day. And political parties that can't get their heads around this or decide not to in the name of freedom of speech are going to regret that day.
All right. Listen, we got to turn now. I guess 10 minutes is left on your meeting there, Charles. But we have to talk now about Valentine's Day, because it is, of course, Valentine's Day. And what better way to mark the occasion by talking about soulmates? Well, a new report co-authored by a University of Alberta professor says people should stop looking for their soulmate if they want a lasting, meaningful relationship. So, Riley, you believe in soulmates or not? And what do you think of this study? Is this a downer on Valentine's Day? Did I pick a downer of a topic?
No, I think I was startled actually to see when I was reading up on this that 60% of folks in the U.S. at least said that they still believe in soulmates. I don't know whether to find that inspiring or in light of what the researchers are saying concerning. But I think that there's the main reason I don't like the idea of a soulmate. So I guess the answer is no, I don't believe in it. The reason I don't like it is not because I think you'll never find somebody that lives up to it. My fear is that you find somebody that you think is your soulmate, and then you idealize either who that person is or your relationship together. And my lessons in life have told me that idealizing somebody is just as much a form of dehumanization as, objectifying or putting someone down or any of those things. You ruin the capacity for people to be messy and make mistakes and to grow together through actual hardship and all of those lovely things that I think are real love.
Okay, Franco, let me ask you, do you think the concept of a soulmate puts unrealistic expectations on relationships?
Well, I was just thinking to myself, it's Valentine's Day, and instead of being on a dinner date with my beautiful girlfriend, I'm stuck talking about politics with you fine folks, and I'm having a great time. But as I say it out loud, it kind of occurs to me that maybe I'm not the best person in the world to be giving dating advice.
Well, but do you think that the soulmate idea is putting unrealistic pressure on folks? You think that? Do you think a soulmate's possible?
Well, I sure hope my girlfriend who's waiting for me for our dinner plans isn't feeling too let down. But look, folks, I'm not too sure. I just hope everyone does enjoy tonight. And I'm super grateful to be here discussing these issues with everyone.
Very diplomatic answer there, Franco. Okay, Charles, let me get your thoughts on this.
George Strait, one of the top country singers of all time. One reason is because he's got great lyrics, the best lyric writer, best lyricist write for him. And years ago, he had a monster of a hit with I Saw God Today. I'm not going to repeat the entire lyric, even though I was a country DJ. I used to play this all the time. And here's the deal. I saw God today is a belief system. Why does he say he saw God? Because he was in the maternity ward looking into the glass at the nursery. And there was his little girl with her little pink socks. And she had his wife's nose and she had his mouth, and he believed in that moment that he saw God. Am I going to tell him, or is some academic going to tell him, that God doesn't exist? As long as you believe in something, whether it's God or a soulmate, as long as you believe in something in this country where you're not imposing it on anyone else, you're not threatening to kill anybody else, you're not using it as a tool for violence, you can believe whatever you want to believe. That's what's wonderful about this country. That's why I call Canada my promised land, even though many professors will say it's not a promised land. It is to me. I love this country. I love Canada. And most important tonight on this Valentine's Day, a Valentine to you, Travis. I love Canada tonight.
Charles, you didn't answer the question. Do you believe in soulmates? That's great, but do you believe in soulmates?
Yeah, I do.
There you go.
I do. Sue me. I do.
Listen, happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Franco, we're going to let you go now and get to your dinner. Hopefully you can make it. It's not too late. But that is our intersection panel for tonight. Riley Yesno, Indigenous rights advocate and writer. Charles Adler, a writer and podcaster, joining us from Winnipeg this evening. And Franco Terrazzano, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, who is in Ottawa and has got a date to go out on.